welcome to We'll Throw the After Party. How is everyone this week? The chat is already lit. Y'all are literally the best. I love how y'all knew. Come hang out, start the chat without us. Thank you so much for being here once again. Let's say hello to some of the folks that are tuned in. What's up, Sylvan? Sylvan's been with us on Twitter all week. It's really been a treat. So if you feel like you're missing context from tonight's show, make sure that you're following us on Twitter at After Party Show. A lot of drama has gone down. We're going to dig into it. So thanks for following along all week, Sylvan. What's up, JJ? Thanks for enjoying the intro with us. And what's up to everyone watching on TikTok? Oh, Marissa keeps fading from the TikTok. I just sent you another request to join, Marissa. What do you think of 911 this week? Or was there no 911 this week?
There was
no 911
this week.
So how are we doing without 911 this week, everyone? I know it's a rough time. Hey, Danielle, Jewish wins. A big week for Jewish representation in the MCU. We're going to talk about it later on in the show, so you can stick around. We're starting the Moon Knight conversation with how excited we are about that, Danielle. So you can stick around until then, and then go watch the episode and come back and watch the rest of this later after you've caught up on Moon Knight. What's up, Bucky? Thanks for joining us again. Shout out to Bucky for designing the new Alpine logo for the show. The freaking coolest. What's up, Leah? What's up, Claw? Oh, I hope you feel better. It's no fun being sick. I literally am just starting to feel better from being sick. So all of the healthy vibes are now being pushed your way. And like, your popcorn's ready. Like, are we all ready to dig into this week? What a week we've had, besties. Let's dig into it. I'm Liz. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Producer Liz. And sometimes you can find Marissa, except when Marissa doesn't connect to the TikTok live. But there she is, I think. Okay, Marissa is on the TikTok live now. There we go. Sorry about that. But you can find me on TikTok and Instagram. And now on Twitter, Liz with two Z's, Producer Liz. I'm everywhere now, so you can come hang out with me. I talk about PR, pop culture, and tomorrow night I'll be live tweeting the Canadian Screen Awards, our biggest night in Canadian media. We're celebrating movies and TVs. Lots of the cast from Schitt's Creek and Kim's Convenience are going to be there. It's a really big night. So I'll be live tweeting that tomorrow, and I think, don't want to make any promises, but this might be the week that I finally begin unveiling the Andrew Garfield interview breakdown series, which I've been teasing and planning for many months. So that's me. Marissa, what's up with you?
Hi, I'm Marissa at Missa on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. I talk about Marvel and Disney and pop culture and theater and wigs, a whole bunch of stuff. But I sometimes put my media analysis college education to good use. Otherwise, it's just whatever I want.
And that's kind of what the new show rebrand's all about, right? It's about whatever we're watching, whatever we're taking in, whenever we want to do commentary around. So I think that's very, very fitting.
Yeah.
Alexis, you're on mute, but do you want to say hello to everybody?
Hello, I'm Alexis at Alexis Blake Reads Comics. My accent came out at Alexis Blake Reads Comics on TikTok and Instagram and sometimes Twitter. And I just talk about cats and comics and other pop culture.
And it's been a big week for you. A big 2 weeks for you and cats in the MCU.
It has been a huge 2 weeks for me and cats. We got a subpar Marvel Meow comic this week. Well, I saw it this week. It came out a couple weeks ago, which was really exciting. So
we'll talk more about that later as well. And Sly, hello. Hi. How are you doing this evening?
I am here. I have a warm beverage. It is currently like kind of sunny out, but it's been stormy all day here. So I'm excited to be here. Cozy vibes.
I will say this is not the first time you've said I'm here and not followed it with I'm queer or we're queer. So I will call you out on that because I feel like
I'm here. We're queer, and we're throwing an after party.
Yay! Tell the people who you are and where they can find you.
Sly. You can find me at SlyCloudMC. You can also find me on podcasts over at Point in Progress. And here. Oh, Lives with JJ. That's the third thing. When there are new episodes of 911 and 911 Lone Star, you can catch me live with JJ on Thursday nights.
Thirsty
on TikTok.
Thursdays, and perhaps a little bit of Thirsty Saturday as well, which leads me to what I've been watching this week in our first segment of the show, what we've been enjoying. I had a very busy week, so I did not watch a lot of things outside of Moon Knight or still rewatching Bridgerton for like the 14,000th time. I don't know how to say that word properly. But what I did enjoy watching this week was a little bit of flirting in the group chat. So if you know, you know. But if you don't know, it's okay because we don't gatekeep here. There's this running lore of the show that Marissa and I act/are a married couple. But really, the hidden couple of this show is Alexis and Fly watching 911 together. So I would just like to open the floor to ask some questions. And really my question is, would y'all like to explain yourselves?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I will say we only got engaged out of spite, which is really on brand for our dynamic. So
Beautiful.
Yes.
you two were being married in the group chat and insufferable, and I said, let's get married because they're being insufferable, and I love that for us.
Well, now you're equally, if not more, insufferable.
Yeah.
than anything
We're
happening
winning at
between
this
Marissa
point,
and
but
I.
that's
Oh
not
yeah,
the way
we're
it's
winning
going.
this game.
Yeah, at this point, Liz and I just share a brain, but Alexis
true.
and Sly are actually married.
Mm-hmm. There's many moments in the week where Marissa and I text each other the same thing at the same time. And we're like, oh, okay. Excellent.
We got it.
Done. And it won't even be about something like happening. It'll be like a notification that will come in on the Twitter account that we're all logged into, or on the Instagram account that we're all logged into, and then we'll both be like, oh, we should, good,
Yep.
done.
Yep.
Versus these two are out here like on 911. What season are we on now? Season 26 of 911 together, watching together, commenting together all the time.
We've watched like
We'll get
two
into
arcs.
it later. We watched like 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Marissa, how many episodes have we watched together?
We watched Better Nate Than Ever.
We did. I forgot about that. We did. That was fun. Although
Which I'm assuming is equally as gay. I think
Well,
that's got to be.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
What's the pickle? What's it called? The thing that he has on his backpack.
Oh, the lucky rabbit foot.
Oh, it looked like a pickle because it was green. But he literally lost one and then bought another one that was like rainbow colored. Like
Mhm.
and they never said the word gay once during the movie.
No, that
Or
was a
any-
big complaint I had. That was my biggest complaint, is that they never said the word gay, but there was like a whole arc of him coming out to his best friend who like has a crush on him, and it's like, are we still gonna be friends because I don't like you that way? It was a whole thing. It was like, you can't say the word, maybe? Okay.
Illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But the energy of the movie is inherently like camp and queer, 100%.
1,000%. I think that Andrew Garfield should have been in that movie, to be honest. He should have been the dad. I'll stand by that.
That's really disrespectful to Norbert, but that's really disrespectful.
Marissa's going to divorce me for that opinion. So let's
I
move
won't
on.
have Norbert Leo Butt slander on this show.
Marissa, what have you been enjoying
Wait,
this week?
Norbert Leo Butts is
is the dad.
Norbert Leo Butts is the dad. And
Why
there's
did you lead with that?
there's like 6 wicked like name
Liz
drops.
tried to get me to watch this and didn't lead with
Choking on my water. Shut up.
This is the time of the episode where Liz remembers she's an asthmatic. We
It's
get
true.
one per week.
We do get, and it's usually at the start of the show.
In
We're
the
never
first
prepared.
10 minutes. Perfect. Yes, I did fail you, and I apologize for that wholeheartedly.
disrespect.
This is a week of disrespect, to be quite honest. But Marissa, what have you been watching this week? Please divert us in a new direction.
Okay. I don't know that it was as exciting as the flirting in the group chat. But I watched the Grammys on Sunday. That was a lot of fun. Got to watch Olivia Rodrigo raking them in. That was enjoyable for me. And then I've been sort of like following this rom-com trend. but it's getting more obscure as it goes on. Last week was Bridgerton, and this week was Our Flag Means Death. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with that show.
It's on my list. Everybody tells me I will love it. I
You
know I
will.
will, but I
Yes.
need to wait until I'm not feeling like I'm watching it for the content to actually enjoy it. So I'm waiting. I'll get to it. I just can't watch it right now.
That's hilarious to me because Sylvan tried to convince me to watch it this week. And they used the leverage that, like, well, you don't like emergency dramas and you're watching 911. And I was like, but I like the way Sly smiles. So if you convince me that the gay pirate show is going to have that same result, then I'll watch it. So.
And this is what we've been dealing with since the last episode.
Truly. I just have to say, it's so good. It's so weird, but it's so good. It's like, it feels very much in the same vein of what we do in the shadows. It's got the same like tone and the same sort of like off-kilter vibe. It's very violent and they don't apologize for that. It's very much like we're yeeting people off this boat left and right and we're not going to apologize for that. But it also is so sweet and like pure and like dismantles toxic masculinity in like 6 different ways. And it's so gay. I cannot stress to you how it is just like implicitly gay. My green screen does not want me to be here, but Our Flag Means Death is so good. And it's like, I watched it all in one night and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. I highly recommend it.
High praise coming from you. And I mean that in the best way, because you really do not hold back or sugarcoat.
No.
So I take this
and I will say
all the seriousness.
It was hard for me to get into because I'm not a pirates person. I don't like open waters in general. That stresses me out. And so it was kind of rough for me to get into. But most of it happens on the ship, and most of it happens in enclosed spaces on the ship. So I felt a lot better about that. And you kind of have to like get over the pirates thing. But once you get into the like human relationships of it, it's totally fine. If you're not a pirates person. If you're a pirates person, it's great from the start. But yeah, I was really happy with it. And there's not a lot of women. And I was fine with that because it balanced out with the gay. And there is a non-binary main cast member, which is
both?
cool.
Why can't we have all of it?
Yeah. I mean, there are women. They're just, it's like, you know.
We're going to talk later in the show during the Moon Knight segment about women in media. There's quite a long section of our run of show doc.
But I don't want to gloss over the point that there is a non-binary main cast member who is playing a non-binary character. That's cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
I did not mean to gloss over that with you. I just was thinking about my rant and channeling
also
it.
Watching a show with a non-binary actor playing a non-binary character.
Yeah, take it away, Sly. What have you been enjoying this week?
I had not been watching Grays or Station 19 since the winter break. And so I spent this week catching up on the past 4-ish episodes or so from the last couple weeks. And I love Station 19. I've rewatched Station 19 countless times, and I've only watched through Grays once. I literally I started watching it, and then the new season came out, and I just and I'll watch every episode once and no more. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, why am I so much more unhappy with this season of 911 that's not great when I have no problems with this season of Grays, which is not great. And I realized I just don't care that much. I understand what Grays has done for the emergency media genre TV show genre, but it's just there. And I'm gonna watch it. I'm not gonna stop watching it. I enjoy it, but I do not give a fuck what happens at all in this show. And I'm just there to have it playing. So yeah, that was my week, was catching up on Station 19, which I am very passionate about, and also alternating between that and Grey's, which I don't care about as much, but I need the continuity. So I've not watched the musical episode more than one time. I saw it once, and that was good enough for me. And then I've also been showing off my ability to name 911 episodes based on a single screenshot, which I'm very proud of. I think that's an accomplishment, that I sent Alexis a bunch of edits and she would screenshot.
What did you do?
So I sent Alexis a fanfic.
You all heard
she read it.
You all heard
and
that.
then I sent her a bunch of edits.
Did you?
And then she screenshotted a couple of them and been like, I want to watch this episode.
And when were you sending such edits and links, Sly? Perhaps
week?
within the hour of the show starting?
Okay. In my defense, I sent that fic before I read it. I saw it in my inbox, I read the summary, and I sent it to Alexis.
There were only two things going on in my life the hour before this show. My marriage and this show. That was it.
Now let's look at the order. Sly received the link to join the pre-show. And 5 minutes later, was sending, I have a whole case to present. Oh, there are many receipts, but we still have to hear what Alexis has been watching this week. So, Alexis, also, I will say, that screenshot came from Alexis. That has to be said.
Alexis contributed to the receipt.
I did.
Sly, thank you for sharing what you've been enjoying this week. I love you and appreciate you. I will be roasting you and Alexis throughout the show, but it does not take away
I'll
from
be
how
roasting
much.
you. It's fine.
Perfect. Bring it on.
We're ready to roast, folks.
Alexis, please, before we get that far, have you been enjoying anything this week? And if you say 911, I am going to kick myself off of the stream.
She changed. Oh, no, she didn't. Let's find out what her answer is.
911?
Would you like to defend yourself? Everyone has been speaking for you.
Okay, but I have some actually important things to say about 911. So I watched 911 and I discovered what queer baiting was. Subsequently.
Let's be serious about this, because I think that this is a very valid criticism of the show.
Yeah. So I think in the public discourse, like queer baiting, queer coding, and I just want that character to be gay become like conflated. Like there have definitely been times where someone has said to me, like, they're queer baiting. And I'm like, I don't think they are. I think you just want the character to be gay and you want to write fanfic about it, and that's fine. Right. So like academically, I knew what it was, but then I was watching 911 and I was like, oh, okay. So queer baiting is when you take the tropes and the lighting and the writing and the sound effects and the music and the acting that you just used 2 scenes earlier for that straight couple. And you apply it to the 2 male characters, and then you tell me that it's something else. It's like, if the straight couple was pointing at the color green and said it was green, 911 would be like, yes, it's green. But if 2 men pointed at the color green and said it was green, 911 would be like, no, it's purple. Like I can think of so many other shows where like a female character has looked at a man as they strip off their t-shirt in the locker room to what a man, and like that becomes the meet cute. But on 911,
that's literally the introduction of Eddie Diaz's character.
That was just supposed to be like, I'm watching this guy strip to like, what a man, right? And it's just like a guy pal introduction. I don't know what to do with that. So yes, I mean, and honestly, I've thought a lot about this today, and I love everyone here dearly. Like Liz and Marissa are very, very good friends of mine. I would do anything for them.
Why do I hear a but? Why do I hear a but?
I would do anything for them. Like, I would unalive people for Liz and Marissa. However, I think there should be some concern about my relationship with them. If an event occurred where I thought the logical conclusion was to dig through 40 feet of mud while screaming wildly to get to them. Like at that point, someone should be like, Alexis, either you're dating them or we need to work on boundaries. Like, I love them. And there's a list of people that I would leave my cats to in a will before I got to Liz and Marissa. Like members of my actual family, like their aunt who has taken care of them and lives here. Like,
Wait. You said before you would leave them to Liz and Marissa.
yes.
So where's Sly on the list?
Well, see, I tried to make these analogies while Sly and I were watching the show, and it kind of fell apart because we're married. So anytime I would be like, Liz and Marissa wouldn't dig through 40 feet of mud for my cat, Sly would be like, well, I would, but I'm just not close enough right now. And that kind of like destroyed the metaphor I was going for. So
Can I just say that there's no queer baiting on Our Flag Means Death? All of the gay is canon. That's all I wanted to add.
honestly, it was so bad. I flipped over to HGTV with my mom and saw Nate and Jeremiah's show, who are like openly queer, have a family, like have done a lot of interviews about like being gay and having surrogates and like this whole thing, right? Very open about it. And I picked up my phone to text my mom in all caps, but they're gay. Because I assumed like the HGTV network must be queer baiting these two men and no one knows they're gay and I must share it. Because I went from Bridgerton yelling at Marissa that they were gay to 911 yelling at Sly that they were gay. There's been a lot of gay in my life this week.
As there should be.
Alexis has perfectly set me up for my rant. So shall we go into everyone's favorite segment of the show? Are we feeling ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I'm really glad that Sly and I have Marissa and a buffer between us. This is a really good setup. So if you're new to the show and you don't know what we're doing, also if you're watching on TikTok, come hang out on YouTube and Twitch with us by heading to the link in my bio. If you don't know what we're doing, this is the rant game where each of us has prepared or at least thought of a rant to bring to the show for the week. We each have 2 minutes to share our rant with all of you, but we have 30-second intervals to explain our rant within. So I'll speak for 30 seconds, and then Marissa, and then Sly, and then Alexis, and so on and so forth until we've reached 2 minutes each. So we have the timer on screen so everyone can hold each other accountable and cut each other off. And as always, let's just tell you what the rant is about so that you can follow along. I think it's pretty clear what I'm ranting about. I think it's pretty clear my rant is going to be about what went down on Twitter this week. Marissa?
I don't want to give a preview. I think it's going to become clear very quickly.
Okay. Do you want to just give like a little teeny tiny piece, just enough to give people context they can follow along?
I'm talking about Multiverse of Madness.
Okay,
sort
perfect.
of.
Leave it there. Sly?
My rant this week is a counter rant to Liz's rant, and I'm very excited about it.
Did y'all know I did debating in high school? Like, this is the show of my dreams. This is going to be so fun. Alexis?
My rant is about cats and houses.
Okay, so a lot of different energy. Sorry, I'll remember I'm asthmatic.
Everyone take a sip of your drink. Prepare
Remember,
yourself.
we love each other
Center
here.
yourself.
Come to YouTube and Twitch so you can see the timer of our rants. And let me get my
Liz,
receipts.
There's 2 facts about Liz, is that she did debate team and was captain of her improv club in high school. And that sums her up really quick.
And I'm asthmatic. Yeah, that's literally the entire personality. Okay. We ready? Marissa, you're really going to have to cut me off because I'm not going to shut up this week.
Oh, no, I'm ready.
All right.
I'm so scared.
Let's do it. spousal rights. In the court of public opinion, I ask you, the viewers of Will Throw the After Party, at what point do spousal rights interfere with hosting rights? My name is Liz. I am one of 4 co-hosts of Will Throw the After Party. And this week, I was gatekept from a show that we talk about on this show when this tweet was released by Alexis, which reads as follows: watching 911 out of context, important words, with my husband, Cyclone MC, is both the best and most terrifying decision I've ever made.
No one is matching my energy about Wanda in the Multiverse of Madness. No one in my life is here to be on my level, okay? Wednesday was a harrowing day for me, okay? I opened Instagram, boom, new trailer, all about Wanda. I scroll through Instagram, 5 new posters. Wanda's front and center on all of them. I go to Twitter. It's all about Wanda. It's about Wanda did nothing wrong. We're here for Wanda. Oh, Wanda's going to have a rough time. All right. In Multiverse.
So this week, Liz is going to come in here and be like, oh, it's so hypocritical. Oh, you're going back on what you said about my takes on how to watch shows out of order. And I would like the audience to be aware that when I called out Liz for watching a show out of order, it started with her watching the 3rd and 4th episodes of a 4-story arc by watching them from the halfway mark to the end on the 3rd and 4th episodes.
Okay, so interesting week for cats this week. We got a Marvel Meow Infinity comic, the basis of which seemed to be that Natasha and Bucky were spending time together and needed someone to watch their cats. And so they took Liho and Alpine to Carol Danvers' place so they could hang out with Chewie. And that's kind of when the story goes downhill, and we see things like subpar accommodations and subpar cat food.
Let's walk through a timeline of events. First, I respond to Alexis Sweet saying, so you can watch it out of context and it's cute, but I watch it out of context and I'm the villain. And Sly said the exact point that Sly just raised, which actually saves me time. So let's continue. Alexis follows with, I'm the wife. I get what I want, Elizabeth. This is where I raise my first point of contention for you, the viewers, to decide on. Does Alexis's right as Sly spouse override my ability to try and contribute to a show and the narrative we talk about on this show?
When Liz is
nobody is matching my energy. This is my turn, Sly. Oh my God, nobody wants to hear about Wanda. I bring my energy for Wanda on this show every week. I'm the biggest WandaVision fan here. I have been attacked for liking WandaVision as much as I do on this show, and nobody else cares. I had nobody to talk to on Wednesday about Wanda and Multiverse of Madness. The internet was ablaze. Nobody in my personal life was here for me. Nobody.
When Liz tried to watch 911 Lone Star, she was watching episodes like 4 hours ahead of me and then being like, why is this dude in a coma? And that's where my problems lie, okay? I know Alexis doesn't like emergency shows, so I started off with the character introduction. I gave her a strong AU to learn the characters, know the vibes, and then I gave her a very specific character arc throughout the show.
This is so stressful. Okay, so also this week, Tinks, who is a content creator and influencer who has this adorable cat, and she has I can't think, I'm so stressed right now. She has her own meal on the Chipotle menu. So Chipotle made her cat a baby Chipotle for the cat to play in and eat in. And I think if Chipotle can make Ceviche a baby Chipotle, then Marvel could do a better job.
It's not that Alexis is watching the show with Sly. Is that I was not even invited to this watch party after an invitation had been extended to me to watch the show with Sly. So the fact that Alexis is getting special treatment is where I draw the line. Furthermore, let's talk about what I want, because no one's asked me, Liz, what do you want out of this? And I've made that extremely clear on our show account this week when I asked you, can I post Timothy Chalamet memes on this account? And all of you responded as Marissa.
Oh my God. Okay. So we all know none of my co-hosts care about Wanda enough. I knew that I couldn't reach out to any of them and be like, oh my God, Wanda's going to have it so rough in Multiverse of Madness. I'm so excited to see this. She's going to be the villain and I'm going to clap. I knew that none of them cared. I knew, because what Liz has told me several times this week. Oh, I still haven't watched the trailer. It's been available for 4 days. It's on Instagram. I
here's the
posted on my
thing.
story.
I'm still stressed out by people watching things out of order. Like, that gives me anxiety. Like, you gotta get the full story arcs, character growth throughout the show. And I know this. And so when I set up Alexis to watch a very specific character beats throughout the entire show, and then she went on to watch other episodes, I was like, this is stressing me out. Just text me your notes afterwards because I can't follow what's going on. So it was very different circumstances.
So in the comic, all the cats are just chilling out at this very messy house, and they're getting food everywhere, and the whole thing is subpar. And I think if Chipotle can make Viche a baby Chipotle, then Marvel could have made Alpine better houses. And so I have some suggestions of houses that Marvel should make for Alpine. I think the first one is a boat, because I think in Falcon and Winter Soldier, we should have been introduced to Alpine on the docks. So a boat would be like home to her, and she could have
There's
a little
lot
boat.
of other tweets that went around this week, of which you can find across all of our Twitter accounts. If you go to After Party Show on Twitter, you'll see all the threads because we were responding from that account to all of them. The end of this conversation needs to be, we need an HR rep, as Marissa has rightly pointed out. So if you want to be that person, you can apply in the comments right now. Furthermore, I need definitive confirmation. Is Marissa going to divorce me if I keep posting Timothée Chalamet memes on our Twitter account? Marissa?
I will divorce you if you don't watch the Multiverse of Madness trailer. If you don't keep up with Wanda, if you cannot match my energy, we're going to have a problem. Because not only was it my co-host disrespecting Wanda this week, it was my own family. I was trying so hard to get my Multiverse of Madness tickets on Wednesday, and my family did not want to cooperate. We got there eventually, but I won't be seeing it until Friday evening. And that is where I rest my case.
I want to finish off my rant with how to watch 911 for beginners. If you just want to binge through something, start with OG, start with season 1, just go all the way through all of 911 and then jump into Lone Star, watch all of Lone Star. If you want to get fancy, you start with Lone Star, you watch until season 2 episode 2, and then you watch OG all the way until season 4 episode 3, and then you go back to Lone Star and then back to OG and finish it out. That's how to watch 911.
Oh, thank God it's almost over. Okay. So a comic book Bucky gets in fights in bars all the time. So I think Alpine would probably also be used to that. I think a baby bar would be an interesting cat house option for Alpine. Bucky also rides a motorcycle. And so I think a motorcycle cat house may be a good option. I would also love to see Alpine in a bodega, complete with like little fake foods that she could play with. I think that would be a really good option.
And that's our rant for this week.
The anxiety's still in my body right now.
Yeah.
I love you all.
heart rate is
You are
up.
so near and dear to my heart. And you're my favorite too.
Thank you.
This happened in the group chat.
This happens in the group chat every day.
Sent a video. Alexis sent a video giving an update on her day, and she was signing parts of it, and parts of it she wasn't speaking in English. She was just signing. And Liz and I had to like piece things together to be like, I think she just said she loves all of us, but Sly a little bit more.
Context clues. Granted, I'm trying to learn ASL. Okay, I really am putting in
We're
the work.
trying. We got
We're trying.
parts and pieces.
Mm-hmm. How are you? I learned that. I'm getting
I'm
there.
laughing at you. I'm laughing at your facial expression. Because it was like an angry, how are you? It was like, it's highly passive
I'm very
aggressive.
concerned.
Listen, Sylvan is right. I feel like we need a breathing exercise. That's really helpful for the asthmatic.
Taking a centering breath.
I love all of you. Sly, I agree with you that I cannot watch half of 911 Lone Star episodes starting at the 30-minute mark.
I cannot believe that you thought, I'm going to start on season 3, episode 3.
It was on cable.
Episode
I was
of a
scrolling through the channels and it was
arc
on, and I said, this
and
matters to
halfway
Sly.
through the episode. And then you were
I
like,
wouldn't
I
even
don't know
do
who
that.
any of these people are. I don't know what's going on. And I go, I wonder why, Liz. I wonder why that dude's in a coma. It's not like you would know if you had watched the start of the season.
Listen, I respect that. Okay? I own that. And I
If you
will
want
I
me
was
to
either-
take you through the episodes of 911 I watched this week, I will take you through them as well. I'm just saying.
Sorry, put a pin in that. That's a group chat conversation for later. Here's the thing, though. Once I got the edits, which I got from both Sly and JJ, by the way, who sent me identical edits, which is probably my favorite thing that happened this week. Either Sly was going to show me the episodes, or I was going to Wikipedia my way through that shit and get lost halfway through and watch them anyway. Because once you see that man screaming and like digging in the mud, and you see that cute child like riding a fire truck in the middle of the ocean, like I was going to watch it whether somebody helped me or not.
I will say there was one moment where I just got a text from Liz, and this will only make sense to 911 watchers, but all I got was just Connie Britton, and I go, please, Lord, tell me you're not watching the end of season 3. And you were, and I was like, no, you can't watch that until you watch season 1.
And I had clicked the wrong button. I was like, there are no serial bombers in this episode. What are you talking about?
What a mess we find ourselves in. Let's pin it for this week, and let's talk about Moon Knight. How about it? I think first, hard segue. Let's talk about Moon Knight. Let's do it. Let's start with round of applause. We have confirmed Jewish representation in Moon Knight. Hooray. Very exciting. You can go to Danielle Silverstone if Danielle's still here. Let me see if I can find Danielle's comments from earlier. If you go to Danielle Silverstone on TikTok, you will see multiple videos and pieces of content that show you the little screenshots where you can see the Star of David necklace and other representation. It's worth following Jewish creators and hearing their thoughts on this. Danielle's still here. Hello. Yes, very exciting. This is something that we were very hesitant about, that we've been very carefully waiting for, especially because, as we talked about last week, there is this production brief that was released, a 31-page production brief on the show, and they don't talk a lot about Jewish representation in it. And if you don't know what a production brief is, it's kind of the master document that the studio releases to walk you, but specifically walk media and critics through all of the critical pieces of the show and the cast and the crew and the decisions that were made to inform the show, so that people can make informed critiques, recommendations, and interviews with cast members. And they didn't talk a lot about the Jewish representation in the production brief, which made us very nervous heading into it, where they did emphasize different points. We'll talk more about the production brief later. But a win.
We love a mezuzah.
Yes.
Always good.
It's nice Jewish boy hours. I'm just laughing at Bunky's comments. Nice Jewish
Yes.
Steven with a V. Love to see it.
I feel like we should just start this conversation. We're going to talk about some of our WTF moments of the episode, but before we get to that, let's talk about some of the other angles of representation that we've been watching and we've been waiting for some more details around, because we had a little bit more of a view into the world of Moon Knight this week. Let's talk about the mental health aspect of the show. This is something we didn't talk about a ton last week, but to the benefit of everyone here, we have Alexis. Alexis, do you want to provide some context around your background, your research background, and some of what you're aware of as you're watching the show?
Yeah, so I'm a boring academic. I have bachelor's degrees in criminal justice and psychology and a master's in experimental psychology, which just means that I did a whole lot of research. And most of that research, my area of expertise was really looking at trauma, how we perceive trauma, what the effects of trauma are, what trauma looks like throughout the life course. And in one of those research studies, I worked long-term with several individuals who had DID. It was a very specific sample, so it was an all-male sample, all individuals under the age of 18 and all individuals who had come in contact with the criminal justice system. So I worked on that study for a while. I got to publish some papers on that. And then other than that, I've mainly looked at like trauma and mental divergencies associated with trauma. So I think the important thing is just that when I speak about stuff like Moon Knight, I have academic knowledge, I have lived experience in some cases, but not in all cases. And so that's where I'm coming from. Boring academic Alexis.
Not boring. I think you're thank you, Marissa. You go ahead, hype her up.
Boring academic, my butt. Sylvan censored it. I would say asked. Alexis is my favorite professor, and she doesn't teach at my college.
And she will be a formal professor someday when she
Yes,
gets the title. But for now, she's our Professor Asterix Alexis here on the show.
That's right.
I do also think that it's worth once again saying, and we've said this in the past and we'll say it forever, we only have so much lived experience and expertise that we bring to the show, and we recognize that when we talk about these topics. So it's important to clarify, like Alexis just did, what some of us do have expertise, knowledge, academic history, and professional history behind when we speak, and the pieces of the puzzle that we are learning and researching ourselves. And obviously we are far from representative of every angle of these stories and pieces of representation. That does not mean that they're not worth mentioning and talking about, though. So Alexis, what did you think about, or perhaps looking at these first 2 episodes and what we've seen of Stephen Grant, Mark Spector, and the Moon Knight persona character, who personally, I have some beef with the show for not really explaining if the Moon Knight is its own character yet, or if the Moon Knight is Mark Spector. But putting that aside, what's your take on how DID and how mental health and mental divergencies have been displayed so far?
So there are 2 kind of big thoughts that are consistently staying with me as I watch the show. The first comes from a lot of conversation that I was seeing happening over the past 2 weeks on social media, on TikTok and things like that. And I think you all mentioned it a little bit last week, but this idea of using the horror genre to talk about DID. And I think that when I'm hearing the conversation, I am seeing a lack of nuance. And I actually ask that could be something that I talk about on the show tonight. So I think it's important to distinguish that the problem is not that the horror genre is being used to portray mental health. The issue is that there is an oversaturation of using horror to shine a light on or portray dissociative disorders. So when we sit here, we can't think of another piece of media that has shown DID, for example, through any light but horror. And Marvel, I think, was in a really interesting place of privilege because they created the Moon Knight comic, and then they created several more Moon Knight comics, and then they did the Moon Knight show, which means that at any point, they had the opportunity to choose a different genre at least once, and they chose not to, right? Horror has been very consistent with Moon Knight as a character in the comics, and that's what they've gone for with the show. But it's not necessarily a bad thing that horror is being used in regards to mental health. I think there are a lot of aspects of mental health that horror can shine a light on. And I think if we think about the mental disorders and mental illnesses and mental divergencies that are shown in media, each one kind of has its own genre that it sticks with. And this is really important to me because I'm someone that has obsessive compulsive disorder, which is something that is shown in media generally through, and most popularly through, a comedic lens, right? It's light and it's funny and it's quirky, and it's pretty much always shown that way, which is extremely frustrating for me because in my life, it does not always feel light and fun and quirky. It feels big and scary and horrific. And so I would like at some point to see this popular horror lens used on OCD. When we think about autism spectrum disorder, until the last 2 or 3 years, it was also shown in a very specific way, where everyone was so advanced in their intelligence, like there was no middle ground for people with ASD. And I think on this show, we talk a lot about representation in media. And I just want to put a pin in why in this instance, I think that is so important. And that's because a lot of people are still getting their understanding of mental health through popular media. So like my area is not very mental health saturated. Those are not conversations we have where I live. That's not something that's part of the public discourse. So a lot of people, including my family, got their information about mental health from what they saw. So when people said, have you thought about getting Alexis diagnosed with OCD? My family said, well, she doesn't look like anybody that has it on television, right? So for Moon Knight to continue, like for Marvel to be in a position where they could have chosen another genre at any point and to continue to choose horror is really skewing the way that people are going to interpret DID, right? Whether they're looking at other people with the disorder or whether they're looking at themselves. The second aspect of the show that I find fascinating is
just before we get to the second point, I want to talk about a comment we got on TikTok. Thank you for chatting with us, Bag of Pudding, who says horror as a vehicle to address mental health can be very validating when it's done well. And I think you made an interesting point when you said that. I feel like we don't have enough content yet from the show to really address if Moon Knight's handling it well, per se. Really, by the end of the second episode, I feel like we ended not even the first arc of the show, but just the intro to what we're about to see moving forward. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would argue that I don't think, well, not really argue. I would say that I don't necessarily think, as it stands right now, that Moon Knight is necessarily trying to be a mental health show. And I think that's really important because what they're doing is they're using popularly understood aspects of DID to kind of draw like shock and awe and interest, but they're not labeling the disorder, or they haven't yet. They haven't had any conversations with us about what is actually, happening. And I think if coming into it, if it wasn't part of the public discourse that Mark Spector was a character in the comics who had DID, I'm not sure we would have known that going into the show at this point necessarily. And it's actually a little troublesome to me because there are aspects that I pulled out in my notes that I'll talk about as we go through that I think could be really interesting commentaries on mental health in the show, but they only work if the show is open about wanting to have those commentaries. And I don't think that it is.
Well, let's just take a second and look at the production brief here. I'm going to pull it up. Or maybe I will.
I have one thing I want to emphasize before. I think one of the really important things I just want to reiterate what Alexis said, is so often specific mental health disorders are classified within certain genres, and we only see them in certain genres. And to the point that horror can be a very validating medium to address certain experiences through is absolutely true. But when horror is the only lens we see a disorder through, it skews people's perceptions of those diagnosed with these disorders. If we only see people with any sort of disorder with like visual or auditory hallucinations or any dissociative disorders are only portrayed through horror, that's when it gets very like stereotypical and stigmatizing, and you put people into these boxes. But yeah, absolutely, horror can be super validating when you take something that is normally portrayed as like quirky and fun or savant and put it in a horror lens. That's when you get something really interesting.
So I just want to take a second and actually look at this with everyone. This is an infamous production brief that we keep referring to. And if you go to Marvel's website, you can find this and read through it yourself. Again, 31 pages. The latter half is bios for all of the people mentioned throughout. So Oscar Isaac, Ethan Hawke, the director, like all those people have long bios towards the end. But just to give you a sense of what we're talking about when we say the show is emphasizing some points over others, what you're seeing right now on your screen is the entirety of the brief where they talk about mental health. And I'll talk you through some of these main points in a second. But just for context, we have almost 2 full pages about why they chose the director, which is a very valid point.
I want to say, if you Google Moon Knight press kit, it should be the first link. So if anybody wants to find this, just Google Moon Knight press kit, and that's where I found it.
You have multiple pages discussing the making of Moon Knight, with like multiple sections within it, of which they sprinkle in pieces about Egyptian history and how they want to do those pieces justice. So really, just to give you a sense of scope, we have not even a full page regarding mental health and Moon Knight, which is one takeaway of this. I think it's also important to note like that the way that I read this is someone who has written multiple production briefs, has written multiple styles of this language, has produced many PR documents to prove the points of why a show is worth investing in. So when you're reading these quotes and reading this content, you have to understand that it's written not just to provide the facts to people that need the facts, but also to have its own angle to it that then can be applied in press. So it's giving really well thought out moments and opportunities for language that the actors and people from the show can then go use as they're talking about the show and all the different press junkets that come up. So when we're looking at this section specifically, to go back to what a point Alexis was making, there's this interesting point towards the end where Oscar Isaac says, because the audiences are watching the action unfold via Steven's gaze, you can empathize with him. You feel what it must have felt like to have all these wild things happening to him, not knowing if he's crazy or he's actually discovered something. And at the beginning, they say, audiences know as little as Steven does and are, like him, swept along on his journey with little conviction in its actual reality. So the show was set up in a way where, not even the character understands what's going on. Not even the character understands his mental health. So therefore, none of you have to either, because we're all going to figure it out together. And it's left to be seen what we learn along this journey. But I think it's worth pointing out that that was an intentional choice made. And
the thing is, depending on where the story goes, that could be a really interesting choice. Because, like, the idea behind this disorder is your brain is protecting you from trauma. So often the main host doesn't know that they have DID. Like, it's kept in the dark intentionally, completely unaware, to protect them from the trauma they've experienced, right? And so that could be really cool, but I have no idea what they're going to do with that and where this is going. And, being 2 episodes into a 6-episode arc and not knowing where, like, not even having an idea of where they're trying to go with that aspect of the story is a little disheartening to me.
And go ahead, Marissa. No, go.
Well, I also think because they're not willing to have the conversation, people are just filling in the blanks for themselves with vast inaccuracies. And so because like Marvel, like the like 1-sentence description on Disney Plus of like what the show is about is like Stephen Grant is a museum worker with DID or something like that. And like they don't even write dissociative identity disorder. They just write DID. And it's like, if you don't know what that is, go figure it out yourself. And so they're like about what DID means in the context of the show and in the context of the audience watching the show who might not be familiar with what DID means is very problematic to me, because it opens the door for people just guessing based on what they're seeing on screen and whatever they have from previous pop culture. There's no investment in, from my perspective, there's no investment in accurate representation at this point.
And that's one of my biggest problems with the comics. I think I said last week, I either love the story or I hate it. And to the point where, like, the Infinity comic that came out last year, 2021, used an outdated term for the disorder, just shows that, like, Marvel in general has a lack of care being put into the stories about mental health and mental illness. And
I think it's just important to say that they think they have a level of care that they've achieved.
Sure.
That is very poignant with what we're reading in this brief and what we're hearing in the press. However, does that level of care match what is needed. I think that's a point.
Well, and I think that is really obvious in the quote that you read, Liz. I don't know that I would ever include the word crazy in a press document about mental health ever. Not in the year of our Lord 2022. And I think one of the things that the show is actually doing really well is illustrating this idea of protective responses to trauma, which is something that we saw a little bit in WandaVision for Marissa, that WandaVision then kind of like walked back from, right? Where it put Wanda in a place where like, we didn't know how much control she had, right? Which kind of walked that away from being like a reactive response. But one of the things I was actually really excited about in watching the Moon Knight trailer in the first 2 episodes was the various references to, you know, let me protect you, like, let me do it, let me take over. But I don't think that plays if you haven't been more obvious about what the disorder and what the trauma is. And I think a show that's going to write, I don't know if he's crazy or not, in a press brief doesn't really care about.
And that's the thing. That may be an actor quote, but you don't have to put it out there. Like, who approved
Ding,
this
ding,
copy?
ding, ding, ding. Yeah. I also want to say, I think that there was a window to do this in this episode when he's getting fired, for lack of a better term. This is a spoiler for the episode now if you haven't watched it. But when he's talking to the HR rep for the museum and he says, oh, like, we have really excellent doctors, like, we can really help you, like, be put in touch with the right people. I understand why that point went the way it did. And Steven's trying to wrap his head around a lot of things and whatnot. But if they had taken a 4 or 5 minute scene, which granted is a lot of time for this episode, but if they had put him in a medical environment with like a lovely written therapist to help him understand what may be happening, that would also have helped us understand, I think, the rest of the episode and all of the stakes they were trying to build around Mark and Steven and who they are and how they talk to each other.
Well, and I find that scene particularly interesting because the first 2 episodes, we see a lot of this like mirror imagery. Like if you think about like when he's talking to the living statue, that the image below him is a mirror reflection of what is happening. The end of the second episode, he's like running on top of the building, but we also see it as him running on water, right? And those mirrors, and especially when he looks in the mirror and he's seeing 3 reflections, right, which are supposed to be representative of 3 personalities, right, 3 alters. They keep using those mirrors as almost to tell us like this is a moment where you should be aware that something mental healthy is happening, right? And in that scene, the image in front of him is not a mirror image. So the image behind the man he's talking to is not a mirror image. But the image behind him is a perfect mirror, and it's not consistent with like the shape or the layout of the room when we see it later. So they went to pains to try to alert us that something important was happening in that scene, and then didn't give us anything important happening. And I think when you talk about therapists and the way that they were referring him to therapy, it calls into mind other therapists that Marvel has portrayed who have also been written poorly.
There has never been a good therapist in the MCU.
In the MCU, ever. So
Never.
I think that kind of goes into the bucket of like how Marvel feels about mental health.
I know you have a second piece of this that you want to talk about. Do you want to dig into?
No, that was it.
Oh, that was it. Okay. I didn't know if there was another section. For the sake of time, I think what we can do is leave our conversation here with the knowledge that we're going to continue this every week that the show is on. And as we download more context from the episode and we hear more of the press tour from the actors and the director, of which I think we're going to hear a lot more after episode 4 is released, because we know that there was interviews that happened regarding pre-episode 4 and post-episode 4. We can dig more into this. This is an active conversation that is certainly not over, but that's a great point, I think, for us to leave it in for now. We all good with that?
Yes.
Sweet. Let's talk about, there's two other pieces of representation that I think we should call out. One is they did something really well, I think, with presenting Cairo and Egyptian culture this week. When again, we're talking spoilers now for the episode, so if you don't want spoilers, come back after you've seen episode 2 and watch the rest of the show from here. Also, I should say, we do read the comments on the YouTube video and stream, so if you need to leave the stream and come back later, you can still comment your thoughts and we'll read and respond to you. Like, we're all here to do that, so the conversation's not over if you're watching the replay. But what they did do with that scene, which was kind of interesting and was very noticeable, they did not like yellow filter that moment when he's looking out of the window. It was a perfect, as is with the regular amount of special effects and video editing that is required of a moment like that, without any additional literal lenses put on. So yay. Yay, they did that.
You
The
did
bare minimum. The bare minimum.
Yeah.
You showed a country that is not typically portrayed in its actual hue.
You showed it the way it looks out of your eyeballs. Wow.
I will say, I want to plug a creator, Amira Reviews on TikTok. Amira is a Marvel creator. And she posted a video talking about this in a bit more detail. So I highly recommend, as we're talking, I'll see if I can find it and I'll post the link in the chat. Amira is also just a little like ball of light. I think on TikTok, if you're looking for a positive MCU, Amira Reviews was not the right handle. Let me see if I can find her. If you're looking for someone who's a positive beam of light, absolutely go follow Amira. She's quite a positive person. Okay, I'm finding her right now.
And I believe a fellow Canadian. Is that true?
She is. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I forgot about that. Amira is Canadian, which I love. Let me see if I can find the video.
It's Amira.reviews.
Thank you.
There's a great graphic in it that like literally shows you the difference between the filter and without. And it's like, oh my God, it does always look like that. Why does it always look like that?
Oh, I found it. It has 124,000 views. Go,
Hell
Amira,
yeah.
go. Here's the link. So go support Amira, and you can learn more about the filter and some context from that video. There's all kinds of creators that have actually been talking about this, which is super cool. And I think that we have and this is another conversation that we can pin and park, because I have a lot more to say around how I am worried about some of the pieces of Egyptian culture they're bringing into the show, but we have not been fed enough information to really make some accurate judgment calls. So I will save my remarks until we dig more into this. One thing that I do want to call out, though, about this culture is I am going to restate the point that I made on last week's episode, which is something the Eternals did exceptionally well was provide us context for new characters. And I appreciate, Sly, to your brilliancy, because this is your favorite piece of the MCU. Like, the Eternals did a lot of things really well that they, as we keep seeing more from the MCU, they deserve credit for. That pre-roll that starts the movie where they're like, listen, here's everything you need to know. Like, Star Wars style. Read it. Got it. Good. Keep watching. I think Moon Knight would have benefited from something like that to start episode 1. If they started episode 3 with it, I wouldn't be mad at this point. I just want like a 30-second piece on the screen that's like, here's everything we've learned so far, all the gods we've referenced, the timelines we've referenced. They throw out language left, right, and center about really serious pieces of Egyptian culture and history and lore that, like, I just feel horrible watching them. Like, oh, that's important, but I have no context for understanding that. And much like the earlier conversation, I'm now going to go invest time figuring it out. However, it would be nice if the show could tell me why it holds weight and significance if they're going to present it in such a
there needs to be a balance, because I understand when you're creating a story and you want to tell it through the lens of a specific character,
Mhm.
that character has all this knowledge and isn't going to, give a ramble on the context and why it's important. Like, yeah, I get it. Stephen Grant is like very invested in Egyptian history and mythology, and so he knows what's going on. But you're targeting this at a pretty widely like Western audience that does not have a great context on Egyptian stories and mythos, right? And so like you have to have a balance between who your character is and their knowledge base and who your audience is and their knowledge base. And I feel like they're pivoting so hard on being like, this is Stephen Grant's perspective for the
Mhm.
show, that you're not giving the audience enough context to fully appreciate all the details you're adding from your 1,000,001 Egyptologists that you have consulting on the show.
And as you were saying that, it reminded me, Shang-Chi also did this exceptionally well.
Yeah.
And they also had
absolutely.
extremely complex lore that they had to reintroduce because of the way they originally pitched us some of this lore through Iron Man. So we have multiple cases of the MCU figuring out new character, a ton of context to dump on the viewers. How do we do it in a tasteful way? So I
They've had
don't.
10 years to learn how to do this. Like,
Alexis, you're muted.
Sorry. I think in this particular case, what keeps getting me is that we, as an audience only watching the show, like if I had not read comics and I had just come in to watch this show, we do not know why Stephen Grant has that knowledge. We don't know why he is so interested in Egyptian culture. And I think maybe having taken the time to explain that or explaining it in flashbacks would have been an interesting way to give us the knowledge while still keeping it in Stephen's perspective, because we could learn what he was learning and why he was learning it.
instead of dramatic flashing lights in all of the suit scenes, give me a nonlinear story. Like,
Sure.
what we've seen from the first 2 episodes, I think would be way more powerful and way more interesting if it was told in a nonlinear style. And I think you would have achieved a lot more and gotten a lot more out of it as an audience if you weren't so like, oh, critics didn't like Eternals, we're never gonna tell a nonlinear story ever again.
Yeah. I think also the like balance between the high moments and the low moments, like sort of pacing wise, I guess, like the high action moments and the quieter moments is so stark for me that I lose everything that's happening in the low moments. Like every time, I think his name is Arthur Harrow, whatever Ethan Hawke's character's name is, when he starts talking and like setting up all of this exposition about like Egyptian gods and like the balance of a soul and like his whole motivation throughout this show, I think I get so lost and like bored and confused. And like I literally wrote in my notes, I'm so unclear about who the antagonist of this show is, because it's either flashy lights running, oh my gosh, this is so intense, or like 5 minutes of exposition about like this deep, rich lore that I'm not familiar with. There's like no balance for me to be like it doesn't. I get that this is like sort of what they're trying to do, but it doesn't feel like a continuous story to me. It's very choppy.
And I think, like, so one of the things that has stuck out to me over the first 2 episodes is this idea of using primarily sleep to indicate a dissociative episode. And I think that is something we also could have done non-linearly. Like if parts of the story were just different alters and we were putting that together as we went through the story because it was told non-linearly.
Good job.
Thank you. Would have been really interesting because then we wouldn't have had to use sleep as a crutch for dissociation, and we would have gotten more of the mental health aspect while it would still be a more interesting story.
Now I want that version of Moon Knight. Why would you tell me that, Alex?
Well,
now I
it
want a
was
version
my
of the
husband's
show.
fault. My husband
Yeah.
started with the non-linear nonsense. So
That's brilliant.
Marvel, we're available if you want to hire consultants
We've
that
been
aren't
available.
just
We're
about
out here.
Egypt. We're
I
available.
just want to take a second and say hello to everyone hanging out with us on TikTok. We're actually hanging out also on YouTube and Twitch. If you go to my bio, producer Liz, the link is there to come see us, and you'll look at us straight on because I know we're kind of looking away from y'all. We're hanging out for another little bit talking about Moon Knight, and we have a lot more to get to. So why don't
we
again
talk about Layla?
I'm waiting.
Listen.
I have been waiting for
Can we
Liz to
please
talk about
talk
Layla.
y'all are okay. As Sylvan said earlier, let's take a collective. Pull up a seat. It might be the loudest bit of the episode.
Can I just start this conversation
Yes.
by reading the closing note I wrote for this episode?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mysterious Layla, I'm so sorry this is your life.
T. Absolutely.
I don't know anything about her, but I'm sorry.
So this is the problem. So let's just dive into the deep end on this one. Okay, I'm gonna say things, and then I am sure Alexis is gonna turn around and say them in a much more eloquent and academic way, which is kind of what we need to have this discussion. So I'm gonna leave some breathing room if any of you want to jump in and help me out here. But it is so discouraging once again to be having this conversation on our show, Kevin Feige. We've done after parties for Loki, What If, Hawkeye, and now Moon Knight. Not to mention the commentary we've provided around all the movies that have come out. And we've spoken at such great length around how we are slowly turning the dial on how women in the MCU are being written and portrayed. And we have walked into Moon Knight with the understanding that this is yet again a show that is centered around a man. We're not specifically talking about gender dynamics for this conversation. And that's fine. We're allowed to have more male-identifying superheroes in the MCU. It's not a problem. The problem is when their emotional crutch and the stakes that they depend their acts around are the downfall of someone who identifies as a woman. And this is really the note that I have many notes that we're about to go through, but I think one that really sums it up is that Layla, from what we've seen in episode 2, which the way you introduce women into media is very significant. It's not that there's some pieces of the show that we can say we have many episodes before we can cast judgment on what is happening here, because it's much larger than what we've seen in 2 hours. But this is a piece we can critique right now. The way that Layla was introduced was mortifying, because she could have been his mother, his sister, his associate, for the amount of individual identity that Moon Knight gave her in this episode. So let's talk about everything we learned about Layla in this episode, because I made a list. We learned that she is the wife of Mark, specifically a wife that he's trying to divorce. So that's fact 1. They went on adventures together. That's a line that I wrote down that Layla says. So not even that she is adventurous, but she went on adventures with Mark. So that's a piece of identity that is presented in direct relation to Mark. She drives a motorcycle, but so far I think every single woman in the MCU has driven or been on a motorcycle, so we can't even really count that as an individual identity factor. You can fact check me on that, but I think there's only a handful of women, and they might just be in the Eternals, that haven't been on a motorcycle. We learned her favorite poet and that she can speak French because he spoke French first and had the book. That was not a piece of her identity that was brought to us via her, again, via Mark. Marissa texted this in the group chat. He is constantly saying, I want to divorce you. You shouldn't be here. You can't be here. And she sticks around, which proves that her motivation in the show is to support him. We have learned nothing about her individual motivation. We've learned nothing about why she can fight. We've learned nothing about why she stuck around. We don't know if she has superpowers or if she's just a badass person, because all of that arc of her character so far was presented in the context of helping Steven, who she thought was Mark. And she knows hieroglyphics, which we learned after Steven mansplained Egyptian culture and hieroglyphics to her. So it actually gives us a lot of answers for some questions we've been asking, including why is this actress struggling so hard in this initial press tour? Because like I said, we have another round of press that's going to come after a few episodes have been out, right? And we're going to hear more later. But if you listen to the Ali Plum Radio 1 Screen Time podcast and you listen to the Moon Knight special where he interviewed Ethan and Oscar and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name right now, but the actress that plays Layla, it's such a tough interview because she has nothing to say. And Ali Plum is an excellent interviewer, and there was not a lot he could say to her. And it's actually hard to listen to, but it's neither of their faults. It's the predicament they've put her in by presenting her in a way where her character has nothing to her. She is a woman, and that is the only identifying factor that she owns herself. And we only know that because Mark referred to her as she, her in the episode. So that's where I will pause and open the floor to y'all to jump in.
Well, just really quickly, I also think like eventually throughout the episode, it's demonstrated that she's perfectly capable of taking care of herself. But I believe it's Mark, the majority of the time, is telling Steven, like, don't bring her into this. You have to take care of her. Get out of there. Get her out of there. Like, don't leave. Like, take the bag. Get her away. Like, take care of her. And it's like, I think she could take care of herself, maybe, if you gave her a chance.
My question is, does she only know how to fight because of Mark?
And she doesn't know how to fight. That was
kidding.
the worst fighting we've seen from a woman in the MCU. They forgot everything positive that they did with even characters like Peggy Carter and how she was a street fighter, you know, in contrast to like Sharon Carter, who had clearly had training, in contrast to Natasha, who had very specific training. This woman can't, I don't know what that fight scene was, but it was a thing. Sorry. Continue. Love of my life.
There is a section on stunts in the production brief, I will call it. I'm just trying to skim it over because the first time I read it, I think the only notes I had were I need Alexis to read this and comment on it. Especially the line, third paragraph of stunt section, page 13. Although there was no specific stunt style used for the show, the MCU's superheroes always inject an element of fun into the stunts. Which, to me, I feel like Alexis has said this in the past. Like you've been very forthright with, many styles are happening all at once, and none of them make sense in relation to each other. So at least that's been verified via this brief.
One of the things, going back to what you said earlier, Liz, that I found particularly irritating was that there were several conversations in this episode where Mark was being threatened with, like, if you don't do what I want, I'll take her as a host. And my question was, why not? Why didn't we start with a female Moon Knight? You're telling me that was an option? There was an option in universe that you could have chosen the probably more knowledgeable female character to do this. And instead you went with the dude?
Also, I don't understand why that would be a bad thing. Why is he trying to protect her from that? They have not explained why being what do they call it, an avatar for Khonshu is such a bad thing. I don't understand.
Which is additionally confusing.
Because again, I don't know who the antagonist is.
Well, and I'm confused as to why some of them are alters, like alternate personalities, and some of them are avatars. I didn't know what to do with that either. I was like, oh, so you're not a protective response, then you're something else? I don't know.
The math is not mathing on that one for me.
That's not PEMDAS.
But I am a little bit validated, but I thought maybe I was just missing context because I truly don't understand. Moon Knight can't be another person because Steven summoned the suit and put it on and then like got the powers.
So what my understanding from what we've seen so far is that so far we've been introduced to two alters, right? We have Mark and Steven, and then both of them have personas. Mark's being Moon Knight, and then Steven's being Mr. Knight. And then because he's the avatar of Khonshu, you also hear the voice of Khonshu in his head.
Which is separate from the TID.
Which is separate.
I'm
Which
sorry
came
to
from
laugh.
a very controversial line, like a line I was offended by. That was because your mind was so easy to break or it was broken already. Neither are things I would say to anyone that had been diagnosed with anything. Neither of those are positive options.
Yeah.
Does it also imply that Layla's mind is easy to break or already broken?
Right?
Yeah.
Great comment coming from Bucky. I did not realize how confusing the show was until tonight. Thank you.
That's what we're here for.
In the comics, Khonshu gaslights Mark a lot, so I don't think he actually was considering Layla. Yeah.
But he should have been because she could do
It would be more interesting if it was like an actual competition between the two. But.
Right, because we already have what's his face? Arthur Harrow, right?
Yeah.
Is that the right name?
Yeah.
So he was the former avatar of Khonshu. And then we have Mark being the current avatar, right? Why not make Layla the current and then have Mark introduced as the former?
Or as her husband, who only knows things that she tells us that he knows. And I think she would do fine if she just learned how to fight. So, like, since Xiao Ling, Shang-Chi's sister, is setting up this whole, like, female assassin fight school, like, I think she could just go there. And learn how to fight.
What if every
Put us
woman
in the writer's room?
What if every woman so far presented in the MCU went to Zhang Ling's assassin school?
Yeah.
And just put them all in there.
Let's just put every female character in the MCU into the 10 rings.
That's your out. That's the way you can fix women in the MCU. Give us a what if episode where they all go in the same room and they talk about what it's like to be a woman together and they all learn how to fight to this insanely incredible effective level.
Knowing Kevin Feige, that episode would be written by a man.
Well, and I love that it's a what if episode. Like, I adore you, Liz, but you're like, the only way this would happen in Marvel is if there was a one-off episode that implied somewhere in the multiverse they were crazy enough to let women band together and fight.
Yeah, somewhere in a very
in a realm we're never
reality.
Gonna Same one as zombies. Pre-zombies, like the women got together and it started the zombie apocalypse. Like that's probably.
I want a competition, like a friendly standoff between the Dora Milaje and the new Ten Rings.
Oh,
that's what I want.
Yeah.
I've wanted
friendly
a sparring
competition
session between Natasha and any other woman since the MCU began.
Yes.
That's not her sister.
Yeah. Even then, that would be cool. Like, just...
Yeah. Great point coming from JJ on a completely separate note. JJ's going to be watching the phases of the moon to see if they're consistent. I'm a big fan.
I had that note, yeah.
Let's talk about that sequence because that's actually, with all of this said, I think there was actually some cool moments of this episode. I really loved the sequence where Mark was like in the suit and then he was on the roofs and there was the moon behind him. It was giving me such amazing Spider-Man 1 energy when Andrew Garfield's injured on the roofs of New York. I loved it. I had a little bit of like a Spider-Man.
It felt very Batman. It felt very Batman to me.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the cape that gave me more Batman.
I think why they chose to characterize Steven in the method they have so far in the show is a direct attempt to not get the Batman comparison.
But they
Right,
failed.
because isn't he like he's like a billionaire in the comics?
He's like a movie dude with lots of money and works on movies.
I
And at
prefer.
one
I
time
like
he was
this
a
Steven.
mercenary that made a lot of money. That's the
I
part
like this
remember.
Steven more. Thank you.
But
I wrote, ooh, jump the moon. Wow, okay, that might be too much moon.
Well,
There was like
and
5 moon
my
shots.
point. I'm wondering, I am interested to watch the phases of the moon because I think that moon was so specific that I don't know that it was actually the moon. Or if it was some sort of like relation to his powers and the Egyptian god and how he was manipulating the moon. I don't know that that was like the actual moon unaltered or unaffected.
Interesante.
What did you just say?
Interesante.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah, I was like, I have no idea what that word was.
We were multilingual for a minute.
I want to talk about powers. You mentioned it, and we talked about this before the show. We had some questions around our possible antagonist, seemingly antagonist, Ethan Hawke, and that little sphere situation with the. Marissa, I know you had thoughts, so why don't you start?
I'm so confused. I'm just so confused. My main takeaway from this episode is I don't understand who the antagonist is. I don't understand what the plot is supposed to be, but I like Steven. And like apparently there's magic now. Like there's Egyptian gods, but then there's also magic, but like maybe that's separate, but maybe it's connected.
I'm gonna plug. Go back to last week's episode where we literally talked about every single magic reference we've seen so far in the MCU and how none of them connect. So with that point already raised, continue.
That was mostly it.
Well, and it's so, I think what we established in this episode was that like the different gods have different powers and we don't know what they are, how they're different. And like, it's fascinating to me because in Egyptian lore and history, there's a big emphasis on female gods. And in this show, they have chosen to give us one female identifying god and one male identifying god, which I think is problematic because then they're being pitted against each other. I don't know why we didn't go with multiple female gods, since that would have been equally as common in Egyptian culture. But they do have differing power sets, which is just weird because they haven't been explained.
I
Sorry
don't
about
know
that.
why they didn't go with the obvious choice for the antagonist and have it be Ra, the sun god.
Especially because we're using the scarab, which is incredibly like cliched and overplayed. And anyway,
I'm still confused. You're muted, Liz.
Sometimes I disappear from the stream because I have to blow my nose, and none of you need to watch that. So if y'all see me disappearing, that's what's going on. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I do think one of the things that Liz wanted to touch on, I'm spoiling your notes. I don't know.
No, please. I don't.
You wanted to touch on, but is that the portrayal of Ethan Hawke's character of Arthur is really fascinating because to me, they're kind of sitting in the middle of this like what we used to think of cult leaders as and what we are learning now that cult leaders look like when we think about people like Keith Raniere, who recently went to prison for his role in NXIVM. And I wish they would have gone a little further to the Keith Raniere route. But I think, Liz, that was something that you had mentioned in your notes that you thought was interesting.
Thank you for perfectly setting that up. Yes. A lot of what you've referenced is actually some of what Ethan Hawke has referenced as well in the press that he's been doing for the show. What I think is interesting about this is personally, I'm not sure if like cult leader is like the most fascinating antagonist to have. Perhaps I'll be proven wrong. But what I do think is interesting is that it's a little bit inventive for Marvel to go this angle. And they're allowing Ethan Hawke to approach it in a way where he's given a lot of agency to find his character's positive motivation for his choices, as opposed to and I think this is why we might be so confused. Like, go back to your point, Marissa, like it is confusing to see someone who should be the antagonist presented in this like peaceful, centered, believing in oneself way. Like, it's obvious with some of what he's saying, like, oh, those are bad motivations, like killing children, like that shouldn't be happening. And Stephen makes that moral compass very clear. But it is interesting in how it kind of goes back to Thanos was given so much room. If you haven't seen the Infinity Saga, I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to spoil it. But we saw so much room from Thanos where he had his justifications for what he was doing and he found peace in it. And it feels like we're kind of going back to that motivation. I think that's fascinating.
I think where most of this this confusion is coming from is that, like, obviously Arthur Harris is like an antagonist of the series, and we're gonna see that reoccurring. But are we getting a villain? Like, who is the villain? Is it going to become him, or because like if so, they set that up really early, and so it feels like right now he's like the main antagonist. But I don't think that's the route they're like sticking with for the entire show. And so it's like this whole like who
right now we have a lot of conflict, right? Like, I think that's where you're going. There's so many different points of conflict, and none of them have been decided as like that. Well, there's, you see this in every like piece of media ever. This is just how conflict works. Like, you have your multiple layers of conflict that have to be solved and kind of a dominoed order to some extent, right? Like, even if you get rid of Darth Vader, there's still the entire Sith. Like, like there's all these different levels. And I just feel like for a new property, it would have been kind of cool after this intro arc was complete to understand the bigger picture that we're trying to solve. And I don't feel like we're in Egypt now, we're in Cairo now, and we're going to do some things. And there's debt that's owed. And like, it's very confusing.
One of the things that, I don't know if you can share the comment list since I'm technologically inept, but JJ is bringing up an interesting point, which is that like the problem that you run into with these cult leader types, right, is that we get to see what their ideal is for the outcome. But then when they become villains, it also kind of villainizes what their outcome was. So and typically when we talk about the way that cults are portrayed in media, we're leaning more towards like socialism and collectivist societies. And so we're seeing part of that in this episode. But if he turns out to be the primary villain, then we have villainized that. I think the other piece that is interesting is that he is a villain who believes that he is also paying penance, which I think is another level, right? Like, he is putting glass in his shoes and walking on glass because he believes that is his way to pay a debt to the gods that he has offended, right? Which kind of becomes this other layer on top of all of this other conflict that's happening.
Yeah.
I think there was, as you were giving that amazing explanation, I was reading up on this comment that an actor in Moon Knight that we have not met yet has since passed away since filming the show, Gaspard Ulliel. He's a French actor. He passed January of this year, and we're going to see him in this series as Anton Mogart, or Midnight Man. Is he also a source of conflict, and will he be presented as a villain? If not, how are they going to like write him out of this? He's a mysterious antiquities collector. And we have yet to understand exactly how his powers, or if he has powers, in the MCU.
And I feel like the description alone is dicey. Like, I don't think any way you frame antiquities collector, like positively or negatively, that no longer comes out well. Like, we're in the age of like Hobby Lobby stealing artifacts from other countries. The British Museum is a fantastic book if you're interested in antiquities and how we have decided that they belong with predominantly white cultures, regardless of their country of origin. It's an excellent book. I highly suggest it. But that's another like bit here. We're like, that's a cliche that would have worked maybe 10 years ago. But knowing what we know about antiquities dealers now, I don't think you can portray that positively or negatively without the commentary not working.
And of all the commentaries, like to present and then have to divert, like the MCU is dealing with this in multiple capacities, right? Black Panther franchise is like perfect example of how many times they've had to pivot who they're bringing in and why. This is going to be yet another example of like introducing something, if they filmed resolution to it or not, and then how do they move past that commentary, or either let it be or continue it in a new way with wherever Moon Knight goes in the MCU.
And Black Panther was also a film that dealt with the smugglings of antiquities.
Yep. Yeah. A good point that I want to bring up from last week's episode on this point of like the museums and like the collections, we were trying to figure out if this museum was the same museum or a different museum, and we were trying to piece all of the museums together. But in fact, every British museum we have seen so far in the MCU has been a different British history museum.
Yeah, apparently this is the National Gallery now.
It's not, though, because one of us may have spent 20 hours last week looking up the museum layouts of British museums.
Well, I've been to the National Gallery. It doesn't look anything like that.
None of them work.
But also, can I say, this series did not film a single day in London. And that's very obvious to me at some points. I'm like, that sounds way too harsh for London.
Do you know where they did film? Do you know
Canada?
Do you know where they did film?
It was in Budapest, right?
Yeah, and do you know where else they filmed?
Did you read the press brief?
They filmed in the same desert where Oscar Isaac shot not only Star Wars,
God.
Yeah. Star Wars, Dune,
and
Moon Knight were all in the same desert.
And he said it felt like a homecoming.
So a couple weeks ago, but I think it was on our Instagram live commentary, which if you're not following us on Instagram, go do that, because that's
at
where
After
the
Party
chaos
Show,
really happens.
No W.
No W. Liz was asking what our price was to watch Dune.
Yes,
And
this has not been discussed on here. Let's talk about it, please.
Yeah, okay.
So Liz is obsessed with Dune, and she wants us all to watch Dune, and some of us are holding out. But my point was that I feel like I figured out how I can watch properties that are scary to me. But it's a very specific list. So I need you to start with a really good AU fanfic that's going to establish all of the characters.
And one of y'all got to take notes and DM it to us after the show. All of you watching. And then
I need you to send me multiple fan edits from Dune. That's going to make me attach to the characters. And then I need you to let me watch it in the order of which edits were most interesting to me. And you have to hold my hand Bridgerton style through the whole movie.
So you want to watch the movie out of order?
Yeah.
I think, I think that would make it really good.
The parts I need to see the most.
In my defense, I did not let you watch the show out of order. We watched it chronologically, but only watching arc, character episode, arc. And it was chronological, but it was just the most important pieces of the story.
In chronological order, but only the parts of the movie that I think will be interesting based on the fan edits that you sent.
I would like to make it
clear, choose your fan edits wisely.
My price to watch Dune was not that high.
Just pause.
You're Liz's wife. It doesn't have to be that high.
I found this. We tweeted it on March 27th on the account. This is the price Liz, must pay to get my co-host to watch Dune. First 2 episodes of 911 Lone Star. That was Sly's request. So working on that.
Because episode 2 is season 1, episode 2 of Lone Star is one of my favorite episodes.
Okay. Watch West Side Story and agree to a watch party. The caveat was that we couldn't do it when I had no voice. I have yet to do either of those things. They're on my watch list. I'll prioritize them.
All I want is you cannot keep gassing up Rachel Zegler on Twitter if you haven't seen her movie.
It's true.
I know, but you can't appreciate her to the extent that is necessary without seeing her film debut.
Valid criticism. Let's remember, I had intention to go see it in the theater, and then I could not. So, but however, it is on Disney Plus now, and I have no excuse. So, moving on. Then what Alexis has said is a Dune spoiler sheet, which is what you just described. Yes, I know. Roast me, okay? Roast me. Everyone can roast me.
I've been on her for months.
It's
4
true.
months.
I'm a busy corporate gal, okay? I've got.
She's a busy businesswoman who only does business.
Woman, okay? Also, I'm scared that I'm gonna
businesswoman.
I'm scared at how much I'm gonna cry when I watch it.
Oh yeah.
That's why I've been watching Bridgerton on loop, because I already watched it once and I know I'm not gonna cry again, at least in the same way. So anyway,
I can give you a spoiler sheet, like
no, I know West Side Story.
Okay.
Are they gonna throw anything new at me that's gonna make me cry differently?
No, it's the same beats. I mean, it's different, but it's the same beats.
A single mom who works.
Liz says this to me all the time.
Yep.
Well, that's because you talk about your cat children.
Yes, how are they?
They're good. They got to go on a stroller ride this week, Marissa.
Oh, yes.
And where do people find photos of the stroller ride?
They're on my Instagram, which also has a link to their Instagram.
So if you want updates on the cats of Wilther, the after party.
In fact, only one took a promenade this week because the other refused to get in the stroller. But
a promenade.
You can find the video of baby's first promenade.
They're waiting for you to go on a courting promenade with your husband, and then they'll both be in attendance. Am I wrong?
Still courting if we're already married.
I don't know.
We kept talking about taking Tommy on a promenade, and I'm like, but you're not courting your cat. That's your child. Like, Bridgerton's gotten too deep. We're talking about promenades.
It's Tommy that needs courting with the other cats in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay, this makes more sense. Right.
You were just
I was chaperoning his
chaperone. Thank you. English is hard.
Okay. Is there anything else we want to talk about with Moon Knight, or can we cap it? Are we capping and moving on to our final segment of the show?
Thank you for coming to our Liz Talk.
Yeah. I just really quickly, I just want to say, Mark Spector has a Chicago accent, and I'm really happy about it.
Oh, I did think of you. I did. Yes.
I've been waiting for some Midwest rep in the MCU for so long.
I'll add Midwest to our representation section of the show, so we'll have mental health.
Representation is so important, women. Guys. Seeing yourselves in media is really important. And sometimes all you want is just bag. All you want is just bag. You just want someone to say bag. And I got it this week.
Oscar Isaac did it.
He said bag and I cackled. Thank you, Bucky. Yes, he did.
I also loved that in your notes earlier, Marissa, you were like, but I really like Steven. And I was like, but I really like Mark. And I think the primary difference other than Chicago is that one has shown that he can unalive people.
Okay, this is my final point. Is I think Mark Spector is going to fulfill the checklist. That's my prediction for the show.
I think Steven's getting pretty close. Steven's already spoken French.
I actually had a moment this week, though, which my husband can attest to, watching 911, where I was like, well, I guess all checklists need an exception. Because I am not as attracted to the character that the checklist would imply that I would be attracted to.
All right.
It's fine.
All right. That was the last point on Moon Knight, is I'm excited to hear more Midwest regional specific variation.
So is that your let's make our predictions for the show now. Mine is that Mark Spector is going to fulfill the checklist. Marissa, is yours going to be more one Midwestern pronounced word per episode?
I hope he says car, and I hope he says milk, because we say a bunch of stuff wrong. Milk. Yeah. And pillow. We say pillow.
Think of the only character in 911 that is brunette, has unalived people, and speaks multiple languages.
But I was more attracted to the non-primarily brunette character. I was more attracted to the other one. It's fine. But we did have an argument about whether or not Eddie could have unalived people. Moving on.
Sly, what's going to be your big prediction for this show?
That every episode is, I'll be so stressed out watching it that something's going to be in poor taste that I won't enjoy the show. Because we're 2 for 2 so far.
Yep.
That was also in my notes. I'm not nervous about the plot. I'm nervous about the rep.
Alexis?
I will say there's a comment that's happening, and I would say yes, someone will need to check on me because I actually speak some Arabic, and that will be a big day for me. I think my prediction is I will feel exactly the same way at the end of it as I do right now.
Mm-hmm.
And how are you? What is right now?
Eh.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna add that to like the show soundboard and play it back to you, and we'll see.
Well, I am in charge of the sound effects, so
You are. It's true. Yes, you are the soundboard. So good. It's already preloaded. You can do that again. Perfect. Okay, let's park Moon Knight if someone wants to alert the chat that we're now talking about other things that aren't Moon Knight related. Yeah, Claw, come back. Exactly. We're moving on. Let's talk about other things that maybe flew under the radar this week that we want to shed some light to. Alexis, do you want to talk about the Alpine comic?
I do. Okay, important distinction though. This was not an Alpine comic. This was Marvel Meow, the Infinity comic, which Marvel has been very cagey as to whether or not is a series or is like a single issue. I've seen reports either way, right? It included 3 cats, Alpine, Chewie, who people probably know as Goose, and Liho. Yay, Liho representation. And it was shorter than the other Infinity comics that we've gotten. But it was also written by the same author that wrote Marvel Meow, which was about Chewie, which is the Marvel book that is about Chewie just like going through all the different characters in the Marvel Universe, which I have on my shelf because my kids enjoy it. But yeah, the important thing, the couple important takeaways. Bucky and Natasha were together fighting and doing stuff, which is very important for those of us on the show who may have shipped Bucky and Natasha in the comics for their entire life and who may currently be very angry that Kelly Thompson is trying to go back to a Clint and Natasha area that some of us don't agree with. So it was interesting to see them together with their cats, being parents to their cats together at the beginning of this Infinity comic. Also important that they were like, someone needs to watch the cats. I'm not sure why the cats couldn't go into battle, because typically the cats are seen in battle. So I guess maybe there was like litter bomb situation. They couldn't go into battle. That was unexplained. And so someone to watch the cats ended up just leaving them alone in Carol's apartment, where they unearthed Meow Mix, which I am very upset about. Because Meow Mix not great cat food. And I put this on Instagram and like people messaged me and were really upset because they didn't know Meow Mix was bad. Meow Mix is not great. Meow Mix was revealed a couple years ago to be made up of the like crumbs of other cat foods. So like, do I eat French fries and know they're not great for me? Yes, but my entire diet is not French fries. That's kind of what we're looking at with Meow Mix. And it was clearly seen on the page. So the world's greatest cats are being fed subpar cat food. And they were able to knock the cans out of the cabinets, which could have injured them. Carol should know better. You can go to Wally World and get your toddler locks for the cabinets. Some of us have had to do this because their cats steal treats out of the cabinets. So yeah, those are your important. That's what you needed to know about the Infinity comic with Alpine. Yeah.
What would you give it out of 10?
I would probably give it a solid like 6 because they did make a comic with Alpine, which I've been complaining about since the show.
So
since
sad
I started on the show.
Yeah.
But it was short. It included other cats. Alpine's representation was not as bad as Liho's, who was actually shown to be in a cat cage carrier as opposed to like a stroller. Or a backpack. It was short. It had poor representation of cat foods. The cats didn't seem to get along. All those are cons. Stop smiling at me.
Okay, let's ask this question. Thank you so much for sending it, Leah. This is somewhat unrelated, but I have a question for Alexis. Is it worth reading the Kelly Thompson Black Widow comics? Because I really liked her Kate stuff.
I'm going to break your heart.
Get on your soapbox, please.
Okay, so I also really like Kelly Thompson's representation of Kate Bishop. I think it's like some of the best, most well-rounded Kate Bishop material that we have seen. It has this really great, like, feminist tilt to who Kate Bishop is, but it doesn't take it too far either direction, right? Like, she's still human, she's still a girl. Really, really good Kate representation. I don't know where all of that went, but it did not make its way to the Natasha book. And I have a lot of issues, without going into spoilers, with the book. And they all start with like, Kelly Thompson's Black Widow run recycles a Black Widow comic book plotline that has been used 3 times, involving Natasha's memory. Both the first and second halves of the comic revolve around Natasha not being able to be both an Avenger and a mother, right? And trying to figure out how she can serve some sort of motherhood role and still be a fighter. But it never, like any of the other Natasha comics, goes into any detail about why that's something Natasha wants. It's just assumed that since she is a woman, she must want to be a mother. And it begins with her being rescued, which to me throws the entire book off. But it is setting up some interesting relationships between Natasha and Bucky, kind of delving into what that relationship was and what it could be, what it should be. Her relationship with Clint, which I actually find to be at a problematic point. I think once we got through Tales of Suspense, Hawkeye, and Winter Soldier, which I do recommend, and as a comic you can read without context, once we got to that comic, Clint started being represented as this character who, like, thinks Natasha should do better and is not good enough. And I don't like the way that dynamic plays out. It also has a Yelena that's the closest Yelena to the movies that we have seen in the comics, so it's worth reading for that. And it does put Natasha in kind of a leadership role, although it's only over other women, which we haven't gotten to see her in before. So maybe it's worth reading for those things, but I wouldn't get my hopes up that it was going to be an enjoyable experience. Nadia on TikTok, I'll drop all her info on my Instagram later. She has done some really good breakdowns of the Kelly Thompson comic book run.
Thank you, Professor Alexis.
Professor Asterix Alexis.
Professor Asterix Alexis.
Listen, I've had some adjuncts in my time who have way less knowledge and experience. I think you can, if they can claim prof, you can claim prof.
I think it's just weird because, like, in the fall I'll be working towards my PhD, so it's like I'm almost there. I don't know. It's
like we can't.
Thank you, darling.
It's like calling your spouse husband before you're married.
Well, we are married, and we only got to husband like this week. Okay, so.
But you don't want to, like, that's something you're trying to earn and work towards, is what I'm saying. Like, so it's, you don't want to, that's going to be a really special moment when you are an on paper professor.
Sure. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sly, what is your under the radar for this week?
Y'all, if you have listened to any episode of Point in Progress, you've probably heard us yell about this video game, but it is finally out. And I am so excited. It's a game called Chinatown Detective Agency. And if you're not a big video game person, that's fine. This game is really interesting because you're playing as a detective, obviously. But all of the clues and references in the game are based in the real world. So using real historical quotes, using real historical artifacts. So when you're trying to solve these puzzles in the game, you have to, like, Google, like, stamps from historical Greece, or, like, a quote from ancient book or whatever. And so it's just so fun and so engaging, because if you're the kind of person who likes to like Wikipedia binge through information on a topic and like acquire a bunch of random knowledge, like this game is for you. I am one case past the like introduction, which I've already played in the past. It was the day one, or I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was like the demo that they had released that's been out for a while, was the beginning of this game. So I replayed through that, and then I'm one case into new content from the game so far. But it's so fun. Even if you're not a big game person, if you're a like problem solving, like figuring out puzzles, information, ciphers kind of person, I think you'll really like it. It's on Steam. I'm having so much fun.
I feel like Stephen Grant would enjoy this game. Would he not?
I want Stephen Grant playing Chan Detective Agency. Give it to me, Marvel.
Marissa?
Okay. I think the best way I can explain this is an umbrella of small scale British comedy centering chaotic women in their 20s. That's the best way I can explain the genre that I would like to discuss. So the pandemic has taken most of my 20s, and I've been living it vicariously through small-scale British comedy. This week in particular, I started with Starstruck, the show by Rose Matafeo, who is from New Zealand, but it's set in London.
DCOM.
What? No. Oh, I've seen the DCOM. Don't worry. I've seen the DCOM. But no, this is a BBC HBO Max partnership. It's called Starstruck. It's about a girl who has a one-night stand with a celebrity who she doesn't realize is a celebrity, and then their like ensuing relationship past there. It's sort of got a Fleabag feel, but it's a lot lighter than Fleabag in tone. Fleabag is light, but it's even lighter. And there's 2 seasons, 6 episodes each season, all on HBO Max. You can binge right through it. It's really great. Then I watched Rose Matafeo's stand-up special, which had me crying laughing. It was so funny. That's also on HBO Max. Then the way I sort of rationalized rounding this conversation under one umbrella is I wanted to talk about Jonathan Bailey and his career outside of Bridgerton. Because, you know, Bridgerton. Thank you, JJ. That's what I wanted to talk about. I would like to talk about Crashing, Phoebe Waller-Bridge's first show, which also stars Jonathan Bailey, which also has very much the same vibe as Starstruck. Crashing is available on Netflix. I didn't realize this until this week. I watched it in like parts and pieces on YouTube before it was available in the US, and I watched it again this week on Crashing on Netflix. And it's also great. Again, Fleabag-ish vibe, but lighter in tone. That show is truly chaotic British women in their 20s. And also Jonathan Bailey is there, who plays a deep asshole. Like the most asshole of assholes. But also by the end of it, you're like, you're kind of my favorite character. I love you a lot. He's really great at that. And then the other thing about Jonathan Bailey that I wanted to talk about is I would highly recommend looking up him in the last 5 years with Samantha Barks on the West End. I think it's West End. It might be off West End. But he did The Last 5 Years, the musical by Jason Robert Brown with Samantha Barks in 2016 in London. And there's footage of his audition singing If I Didn't Believe in You. And it is my favorite performance of If I Didn't Believe in You I've ever seen.
I think is it making the rounds on TikTok right now?
Making the rounds. It's out there. You will find it eventually, but please seek it out.
It will find you if you are worthy, is what the TikTok algorithm told me this week. It showed it to me 6 times in 2 days.
Yeah. I mean, it is, again, like playing he loves to play assholes. He's playing a deep asshole again in the last 5 years. It's very much Gaslight Central, but like lovable tenor, impressive acting choices, Gaslight Central. So I would recommend all of those things. And I'm gonna say that it all counts as currently under the radar because Jonathan Bailey's, blowing up because of Bridgerton, and Starstruck just finished season 2. That came out like last week, and I just realized Crashing's on Netflix. So it all counts because it was under my radar until just now.
That's the exact definition of the segment of the show. You did it perfectly. That's like a textbook example of what this should be.
Thank you.
I will be adding all that to my list after I get through the Dune list that I forced upon myself, which I'm not obliged to watching those things, but I will be adding those to my list.
I should say, sorry, all of those things I just recommended, hard R.
Rated R.
Hard R rating. Yes.
Yep.
Sorry.
Good point. So if you are under 18, maybe skip Marissa's suggestions until you are 18 or older. My under the radar quickly, because we're at the end of the show. It has been Canadian Screen Awards week. And if you're like, I'm not Canadian, I don't care, Liz, I'm going to tell you why you should care. This is a platform where we see what's rising in Canadian media. And currently we are in an era of Canadian TV having huge global impact. So Schitt's Creek. Kim's Convenience, which is the birthplace of now superhero Shang-Chi actor Simu Liu. It's also so many shows that are gaining recognition globally, like Working Moms, I think is one of the best shows on TV, sort of, which HBO Max has picked up. It is certifiably one of the best shows. Talk about representation. It's doing representation and having those conversations in a way no other TV show has ever done. So if you're looking for the next big thing, if you're looking for your next Schitt's Creek, if you're looking for that next show that you can gatekeep for a little while and then tell all of your friends about because it's that good, Canadian Screen Awards is the Canadian Screen Awards, and Canadian Screen Week is the time to find those hidden gems. And tomorrow night is the main ceremony. So all week we've had every night of the week was like a different subcategory of themes, much like, how you have the Grammys premiere ceremony or like the Emmys technical awards. We've had those all week long. So there's already tons of winners and awards have been given out. Tomorrow night, we see all those main awards, and we're having actors join, like Catherine O'Hara. So Moira Rose is going to be there. The cast of Tall Boys, which is one of the best comedy troupes in North America. They do the show called Tall Boys. They're incredible. They are so smart. They're like, we watch their show every single night. Like, it's so good. Anyway, it's a big deal. Tomorrow night, I'll be live tweeting it. I'll make a video with some of the winners and some of the surprises that I think, that I see happen at the show, but also some of the surprises that I'm predicting with who might win or not win. And I'll be recommending some shows that I think you should watch next. And there's already a video of that actually up on my TikTok right now. So if you're looking for something to get started on, that you can feel like you're the first person to find it, Canadian TV has got it.
Before the show, one of my favorite medical dramas from last year was up for something, right?
Yes, Transfer is a Canadian medical show. I am not a huge medical show person because I get kind of squeamish, so I don't really handle it that well. But Transplant is phenomenal, and they're up for some awards, and I think some of the cast will be attending as well. It's also in my recommendations video, so you can check that out on my TikTok. Transplants in there. There's also some really great Canadian TV that's super underrated that has been canceled for many years now, that I also have in that recommendation video. So lots of TV. I think there's one show that's kind of like Nancy Drew if Agent Carter was good in one. So you can find all that on my TikTok. But that's what's been under the radar for me, and a lot more will come from that as we see the winners and whatnot. If you're a bit more of a movie snob, we do TV and movies in one ceremony. So all of the Canadian movies that are going to win Best Picture and Best Direction, our big awards, that's also happening tomorrow. And there are many movies that have gotten international praise, Sundance, Toronto International Film Festival, that are up for awards tomorrow night. So also a great place to find some movies to watch and some Canadian storytelling. And Danielle, I see in the chat, if Agent Carter was good. Look, I said it. I think we've reached the end of our 2 hours. So very quickly to cap things off, I'm Producer Liz. You can find me, Producer Liz, everywhere. And now on Twitter, Producer Liz with 2 Zs. I also post and should post a lot on our new show account, After Party Show, so you can come find us there and see how many Timothée Chalamet posts I get away with next week.
Too many. The answer is too many.
Never enough. Actually, I had this queued up the whole show and I forgot about it. I had a jump scare ready. Here it is. So I wormed one into the show. Marissa?
I am Marissa at Miss of Bobissa on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. It's more of this. It's just more of this. It's more of me being like this.
Great.
I don't know. I talk about pop culture, media. Sometimes I use my college education.
If you are
Wanda,
also
honestly,
about Wanda,
let's be real. The next month is just going to be Wanda. So if you're matching my energy about Wanda hype in Multiverse of Madness, come on over to Miss of Bobissa.
Sly.
Alexis, Sly. I don't know who's next.
Alexis is muted, so I'm gonna let Sly.
Don't let me pick who's next.
I like how Liz is hosting and Marissa is out here trying to dictate who's going next.
But there's such a silence, and I'm like, am I supposed to just like tap who's going next? I don't know.
I cannot wait to rewatch this episode. Is all I'm gonna say.
I'm so excited.
Sly, plug, quick.
You can find me personally everywhere on the internet at SlyCloneMC. You can find me talking about non-MCU Marvel movies at MC University, and you can find me yelling about video games on Point in Progress, and you can find me getting tipsy and yelling about queerbaiting in 911 with the lovely JJ every Thursday live on TikTok.
I'm Alexis at Alexis Blake Reads Comics everywhere on the internet. I talk about this stuff on TikTok. I talk about my cats on Instagram, and I flirt with my husband on Twitter. So I hope to
And
see
in the
you on
group
all those
chat.
platforms.
Accurate.
That was really accurate.
Okay, I'm gonna say goodnight to TikTok and hang up the TikTok stream, but stick around here on YouTube because I want to ask a question to all of y'all. So if you're watching on TikTok, come over to YouTube real quick. But thanks for watching over here. So many likes sent tonight. That's so fun. I love a TikTok stream. Question I wanted to ask everyone hanging out with us on YouTube before we sign off for the night. We've got all these fancy new social media accounts that currently Twitter has been a lot of live tweeting, been a lot of Liz making memes and not clearing them in the group chat before I post them. And we have an Instagram account where you can find updates. But my question is, what content would y'all like to see from us throughout the week? Would you like highlights from the episode shared on Instagram and Twitter so you can rewatch little highlight clips? Would you like our takes on these things as the days go on, like in between shows? Are there memes that you want to see, commentary you would want more of, more expose of the group chat? If you have opinions, let us know. We're starting all of this posting and we want to know more of what you want to see from us outside of these episodes. Is there anything else we want to say about that before we sign off? I didn't clear that with any of y'all before I said it, but yeah, and follow us if you're not already, because we have a lot of fun if you can't tell by everything we talked about this episode.
Follow us everywhere at After Party Show, and follow us on Twitch and subscribe on YouTube and click the bell so you get a notification when we go live, and do the notification reminder thingies on Instagram when we post a new show, and do all the things so that you don't miss us, because it's a lot of this.
So you don't miss Bo.
I quit.
All right.
I quit.
On that note, it's time to end the stream. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. And we will see you next week at our after party. Bye.